I hope this episode brings you a touch of small delight or perhaps a spark of insight. Because this episode today holds some of the most crucial or key thoughts I've had over the past month or so. I think it's quite significant for me, so I hope it might be of some help to you as well. First of all, this is the most crucial lesson I learned while starting a business. All right, I forgot to mention, the context is that I started to start a business last year. Then our very first project, well, it did fail, or at least it turned out to be a failed endeavor. Yes, so why did it fail? Well, we built an AI overseas expansion product. I believe the key reason we failed was because we messed this up here. The issue was that we didn't start by forming hypotheses and then building. Instead, we built a product straight away based on our own needs. Then we tried later to find ways to sell this product to others. But that entire logic was completely wrong. And that's why I say this project had one major flaw. We got this part completely wrong. So because this point was wrong, but it wasn't until perhaps last month that we realized this. And by then, several months had already passed, which amounted to a complete waste of time. Let me give you an example. Many who are just starting out when they try to start a business often make this very mistake. Though many may tell you this is wrong, most folks who want to start a business often think the first step is to just build. Because they think they'll build something first, then share it with others who will gradually start to adopt it. This is not the path for startup business ventures, but rather methods used by mature products or large firms with resources and established backgrounds. For instance, I had a background working at tech giants for quite some time. I didn't go through the 0 to the 1st of December-ation phase myself, but there was a time when I witnessed a product evolve from 0 to 1. But back then, I didn't know that the product's leaders and management had carried out such meticulous research or similar efforts. That must have been because I recall that in some key meetings, the bosses said they had spotted certain customer needs. By visiting clients in various ways, they spotted this need and thus created the product. Of course, perhaps I didn't know at first, but later on, I joined this project myself. By the time it came to me and I needed to help out, it was already fully matured. And as a marketing person, my job was to better package and promote this product. Though this product was entirely new to the market, with the backing of a major firm and ample funding, it could still be successfully launched. So we poured in quite a lot of funds, plus some CSTO internal resources, and thus we launched the product. So at the very start, I myself fell into this very same trap and felt like we had nothing. How would you introduce our product to others then? This is a completely wrong approach. I believe this is something every entrepreneur, and especially small business founders, must clearly understand. This, to be frank, you might know this fact, but when you start doing it yourself, you still fall into the mindset of, I must build something first and then sell it to others, because we aren't used to selling a concept or even an idea that doesn't yet exist. But I've seen on Rednote that many people are already doing this, including one of my friends. Let me talk about Rednote first. I saw many posts there where people said, I want to create a product of some sort. Any takers out there? Something along those very lines. And down there, I've read quite a few of these posts myself. Then folks below would say, wow, great job, your idea is brilliant, sit and wait, or ask for early access stuff. So what this means is that once user demand has been validated, he then begins building the product. He already has a large group of users who understand the concept and the idea fully. And it's not like I build a product first, then have to go out and find people. That's quite different. And more importantly, you find people first. You don't have to worry if they will buy it or if these features will resonate with users. And most importantly, you don't have to spend a dime. Because we are building a product, it still requires time investment plus some resources like server capacity and the like. While there are sorts of small resources involved, they might not be many, but they still cost time and money. So assuming you have web coding tools at hand, it might still take you several weeks to build a usable product. But in these few weeks, you might still hit a snag or face a common pain point along the way. Or a common pitfall many run into is that the product just isn't good enough. Too simple, too basic. We must make it more polished and even better. This is a common pitfall many people fall into because you might think this thing looks terrible, too crude. What is this? It's buggy. Because we've grown used to it, or because you view it from a builder's perspective. You might think this thing is too crude, and then you just push it all off on others. That would be a huge embarrassment. So you would want to make it better and better and better and better. So the time spent here isn't just a few weeks. It might stretch into several months. But once you've spent months crafting this product, no one wants to buy it. If no one wants it and no one is willing to pay, then wasn't all your time and effort just wasted? So this is why we failed right here. The product we spent months refining and making nearly perfect turned out to have no users at all. This surely points to a major flaw, and you'll find that you try every way to get folks to use it. We try to get folks to use it in all sorts. They might even voice disapproval right then, or once they tried it, they'd glance once and just leave with no retention. This shows that this user is struggling to find the right people and match them to their intended needs effectively. I am sharing a positive example. I have a friend. He tested his idea right from the start on the Rednote platform. And then, well, the results were found that many folks shared views, felt connected, and faced similar pains. And through the Rednote platform, since now Rednote allows personal accounts and lets you open a shop without paying fees. So he used the platform's features to open a shop and list his products there as well. He found that people actually used it, and once he made money, he could start mass producing the product. Whether it's brand upgrades or submitting the app for development, all of that is perfectly fine. So you see, the two of us took quite different paths altogether. We started from our own needs and skipped the step of validating whether users would want the product. Once we built the product, we found no one bought it. So we started frantically seeking buyers. And once we found folks, but it still didn't work, we quickly shifted our positioning or tried to find more people, yet still struggled to find anyone. But look, just like my friend here, he found people first who already had a need. Then we launched this paid product just to get those folks to actually buy it. So why did his paid offering take off so fast, while we never found someone willing to pay, or even to keep using it over time? So I believe this is the root cause of our failure. We skipped that crucial pivotal phase entirely. I myself wasn't very clear about start business, especially AI products. With internet products, the workflow and process are indeed quite different in reality. For instance, if you open a shop, say, a shop that sells steamed buns, I'd need to rent a space first. Or you might look first, and once you've seen, you make a steam bun and then sell it to others. But yet, I used to think this way before, though as I speak, I now find myself somewhat less convinced of this point. If you don't do any research first, yet still put real money into opening a steamed bun shop, will people even come? Just this, if you do no prep work, no research, no observation, no interviews, and just plow public funds into it, thinking I can run this business. The cost is low, so I'll just go ahead. Then it is quite likely that this will come true. And the physical stores tend to require much higher upfront costs. So, as I say this, I suddenly realize that just jumping in without thinking, judging, or testing first is never the right approach. You must think, assess, validate, and then act. And right now, I've started over from scratch again, which is like seeking out a new direction to pursue. And when seeking this new direction, there's no need to jump straight in and build something brand new entirely from scratch. But I first seek out this person. I can pitch a concept to them. And if there are users who need this thing, if he is willing to trust me, then I will start working. So this point isn't just about building an AI product or product that blends online and offline. It is about finding that one key step when you want to sell something to others. I think I get it right. This is the first point I want to share. And the second is about systematic learning and problem solving. I myself, back then, though in this area, felt this was a very solid approach, systematic learning and sorting. But recently, I realized I still haven't done enough in this regard. For instance, one big mistake I made while trying to start a business was feeling quite lost during my first 2 months. Many tasks were tackled in a rather haphazard way. For instance, today I thought, tomorrow I could try doing something to test whether it might be effective. So I went ahead, and it might have worked or it might not have worked at all. Many more things don't work, so if they don't, what should one do then? Just try a different path. Right. But now it seems that these few specific points don't form a logical chain at all. You simply cannot derive a tight conclusion from these points in a rigorous way. This is precisely where I fell short in the very beginning. But later, in December, I suddenly realized this very point. Once I realized this, I began to pursue systematic learning. So, when I want to solve a particular problem, I first study it systematically and grasp its framework. Once I had a rough idea and some clear directions, I began to put it into practice. Through practice, we end up adding all sorts of information along the way. When I was writing SEO content, I thought, just what is going on here? What kind of titles, body texts, and formats make for better performing articles here? Perhaps when I first started learning, I hadn't covered these points, but as I wrote, I kept learning more by researching and searching online. And I learned that doing it this way is better, and this way is better. So in a way, I ended up with more structured learning and tweak. So in SU, I believe it was one of the clear turning points we saw within the entire project life cycle. It might just be a small, perhaps the only one thing that stood out. Back in early December, the traffic Google gave you was nearly zero, or just 10 to 20. And on December the 31st, our daily impressions suddenly hit 100, a small gift. Indeed. Then came January, and one day, probably around the teens, then one day, our site's daily impressions surged all the way to 600. Though it dipped later on, in the past week, our daily impressions have stabilized at 200 to 250. In fact, last month, December, we saw a significant boost in traffic, and the volume has remained quite steady since then. I also noticed a positive sign. Our traffic sources initially spiked to 600, including that 100 mark time point. Yes. Why did the blog post I wrote go viral? Well, not quite viral, but it did get a bit of traffic, just a little, compared to the others that hardly anyone reads. 下波波 blog-wise. Just this one post got some views. So far, it's brought roughly around 5,000 impressions, while others might get just a few hundred. But this one hit 5,000. So this 撇册's traffic rank has now topped all other sources of traffic on our entire site. But what is another positive sign that we've seen? I noticed another article whose traffic is now gradually rising. That one is mine as well. The original one now has seen a decline in its traffic levels. But I noticed this new article has gained traction, and several others are also climbing in terms of traffic now. For instance, if there's no traffic, it might be under 100. But I've seen these posts climb steadily, like from 100 to 300 or 400, maybe even 400 or 500. This hasn't yet reached the thousands, but I can see it steadily climbing higher over time. So this is the outcome of my systematic learning. Another aspect is social media. I'm mostly active on Twitter and the X platform. Before I started on Twitter, I was quite confused and didn't know how to use it. And here, just to share, there's a big difference between doing social media in China versus abroad, especially in how new accounts are supported. In China, if you're a new account, those platforms do offer some traffic boosts for new users. Like RedNote, Douyin, Bilibili. Xiaoyuzhou might not do that. But the other major social platforms do offer some traffic boosts to new users. So you see many posts that go viral with just one. Because once they hit on some decent content, maybe not even great, just stuff people like to watch that, tends to spark conflict and debate. It will go viral. Yes, you can see on RedNote many new accounts that just posted once and immediately went viral. But this post might be the kind that's super eye-catching the sort, that really grabs attention. It might go viral, but not so well overseas. Taking X as an example, when I first posted something, it only got 5 or 8 views. And I wondered, had my account been restricted somehow? Each solo here, I posted several more, yet still got the same outcome each time. And there's another site called Reddit too. On this platform, if you don't farm your account and don't accumulate enough karma, you can't post in certain subforums at all. And if you're a new account, just making wild posts or comments, even that isn't too wild. Just by interacting a bit or doing so quite often, if you post a comment or even your own thread, you might get soft banned right away. That sure is one of those very peculiar situations. Yes, and the same goes for YouTube. I've noticed many high quality videos there that are still quite new to the platform. Hadn't been active long, so it got a fairly low traffic boost. Just so long as you're normal, with no built-in traffic, no channels or resources at all. If you start from scratch entirely, overseas, you must begin at the absolute basics first, but there are some chances in the domestic. So later on, I systematically studied how others used Twitter, and then I started spending time on it. To sum it up in one line, the key to foreign social media is to invest time in those platforms. You need to spend enough time on these platforms for them to gradually give you traffic and weight. Take X as an example. Suppose I have very few followers, just 10 or 20, then the reach you get would likely be 10 or 22. For instance, my current follower count is over 40. The traffic here would be around 50 to 60, and one post hit just over 100, though most stay in the 45 to 60 range. Then I checked some other accounts, and if your profile has over 100 followers, your reach is likely over 100 as well. If your account has over 1,000 fans, then getting hundreds of views is quite normal. So the longer you spend time on this platform, the more content you consume, and the more you engage, the more data you build up, the more this platform will gradually give you traffic, not just because you post something and it goes viral. This is an extremely rare scenario for regular folks. You might as well forget it. And then some big name shares your post, and then something happens as a result. But the question is, why would he share your post if he hasn't even seen it, unless he knows you or something? But all things considered, I think this is a fairly balanced approach as well. Because from the platform's perspective, it has filtered out those who are loyal enough to the platform and willing to spend ample time on it. For instance, if I myself were not willing to spend time here, I'd glance and just leave. I haven't spent much time on this platform, so its user retention is quite weak. So they're also using methods just like this one here. Get you to use this platform bit by bit until it becomes a habit. You just can't live without. Yes, which is why I said that with domestic platforms, there are still tricks to grow from zero quite quickly. But with foreign platforms, you simply need to spend time on them consistently. So here's a small piece of advice. If you plan to venture into overseas markets, if you plan to do things, then you must start right now and begin setting up your overseas presence. Because at heart, it relies on time to sustain. If you lack the time, it will be tough to manage indeed. So why not start registering accounts now and gradually observe it and spend time on this platform? When you need to use it in the future, you'll have an account that's been nurtured well with decent weight and ready for marketing efforts. Oh, all right, and there's one more perk on the foreign side. So once your platform's authority hits a decent level, the data won't strip away your base traffic easily. I don't know if folks use Renault here, but from my own experience, I found that Renault truly values each individual post you create. Your account weight might play a role in this as well, but if your chosen topic isn't strong enough, then its traffic will drop quite significantly. For my own Reddit posts, the good ones might get around 3,000 or 4,000 views, just a small eye count. The worst ones might get just 200 or 300. The gap between is huge. But from my own observations, Twitter is still quite small scale. Whether you put in a lot of effort to write something serious, or just slap together a flimsy sentence, their reach tends to be quite similar in the end. But there's also a chance that, since Twitter is text-based, the posts tend to be somewhat shorter in length. So the gap between high-quality and low-quality posts isn't that stark on it. It might not be like with video or audio, where you can clearly judge its quality from the content. But on a platform like Twitter, a long post versus a single line might not differ much in quality. So overall, this aspect of it remains fairly stable. But this is a great aspect too, as long as you nurture this account well. If you have enough followers, you can generate a steady traffic stream reliably. For instance, if we have 1,000 followers now, that would mean roughly 1,000. Each post you share could get about 1,000 views. So if you want to promote your product, say by posting 5 times each day, you could get around 5,000 views. He said not to worry, that 5,000 is pretty much guaranteed. Quite reliable indeed. But you shouldn't post too many annoying ones. This is just a guess though. It does seem fairly reliable. But if you're in China, right, you might need to pick topics carefully, here and there. So I think this is another case. Well, as for China versus abroad, each has pros and cons. But for myself right now, I still prefer this style common overseas. Okay, I might have gone off topic, but once I studied things systematically, my results and outputs improved quite a bit. And later on, well, I didn't quite grasp this point well at first. And it wasn't until quite recently that I did. And then I suddenly realized that many of our actions or decisions could be handled systematically from the start. For instance, when I first did user interviews, I would think, oh, I guess I should ask these sorts of questions. But later on, I found it better to discuss with AI first. For instance, if I want to do user interviews, could you help me design a framework or structure of questions? I should ask. And that AI would then tell me, you need to clarify exactly what your goal is. And what are your first, second, and third steps? What must you ask? And what are the links between them? If you haven't developed a systematic way of thinking, then many things will just be scattered. For instance, maybe I really wanted to know this, so I might just ask, but in reality, the info gained would be far less. If you start by learning in a systematic way, then you can become more efficient in doing so. There's a superb example here, tidying up your wardrobe. For instance, if we buy 10 pieces of clothing each day, you might remember them clearly at first. But if you don't sort them once you bring them home, you just pile them up and leave them aside. A month later, 2 months down the line, you'll find a huge pile of clothes right in front of you, and you wonder, why do I still have nothing to wear? Right? If you can categorize them and then think methodically, like I should sort and summarize each batch first, then finding a piece of clothing in the future will be easy. Let me give one more example. Say we are now trying to build this. Each day, some of our learning or practical outputs aim to turn abstract concepts into concrete skills, like stacking firewood. If we lack structured goals or clear direction, we might chop one stick today and another one tomorrow. Cut one stick tomorrow and still feel quite proud, thinking, look great, I gathered another log today. It was quite a haul. But these scattered logs will still struggle to build a proper house indeed. But if you have a clear vision in your mind, like, I want to build a fine little hut, how many large logs do I need? And how many of these logs and how many bamboo poles will I require? Once I had a very clear vision in mind, each day I might still bring one piece of timber, but I know exactly how to make good use of this one piece. With such a detailed plan in place, in about 6 months, you could build this fine house quite easily. Because all the things you need to build a house are already in your mind. Then you can, through practice, organize them into a systematic framework which will allow you to build such a house effectively. So for me, this feels like a major shift in my thinking patterns, or perhaps in how I approach learning and growth. It will boost my work efficiency and yield better final results. And now I've grown quite used to using AI to help me organize and structure various things. I think this is well worth trying out for everyone. The third point I'd like to share is note-taking, a great habit that can truly transform our lives. I used to have this pain point, reading and then forgetting. I think many of you might have faced similar troubles as well. But back then, though I had this pain point, it wasn't quite painful enough for me to care much. Just let it slip away. I can recall some things, that's quite nice indeed. And if I couldn't recall it, well, that was fine. But later I realized that this approach led to poor reading efficiency and weak information absorption. What we should do isn't just to read haphazardly, But to ensure that what we've read stays firmly in our minds, what's the best way to achieve that? Just take notes. I now share on RedNote the key point I learned each day from whatever I read or studied. But there are many more details in there that I probably won't share publicly. Just jot them down in my own notebook. But I still feel that it might well be worth recording down for myself somehow. And beyond that, what we should do is spend a few minutes after you've listened to anything to just briefly organize your thoughts. For instance, when you listen to this episode of my podcast, you might feel it was quite helpful. And if you just close this episode, do nothing, and start the next one straight away, then it's quite clear you'll forget it entirely. You might recall one or two key points clearly, but most of the ideas that struck you then, but left a faint impression, will likely slip your mind. But if you take notes, then you'll have a solid record of what you've learned. The note-taking method I personally prefer is drawing circles in your notebook here. For instance, what is his workflow? What is the structure of their logic? Typing doesn't convey such logical connections very well. But if you're using this notebook, you can work on a blank canvas to map out the inner logic between the two ideas. Even just a few words, you can circle them together or add a few arrows or use some shapes placed side by side in any way you like. Group them as well and sort them into clusters. If you glance back later, you'll see just how much you can learn from this, which is why I strongly recommend everyone try taking notes like this. Lastly, something I'd like to share with you is my recent thoughts on risk preferences. A week or two ago, everyone likely heard of Alex, the free solo legend who scaled Taipei 101. I think most of you might have come across his name before. I knew of him already. He's the legend who free soloed El Capitan in the US. The documentary Free Solo he made also won the Oscar for Best Documentary Feature. Back then, I didn't know much about him or delve deeply into his story. I just had a vague sense. But after this incident, I became a huge fan of him and his achievements. I thought he was just amazing, or at least quite impressive. One thing that really impressed me and made me trust him was his own sense of risk assessment. Because to us, rock climbing up hundreds of meters high building is a move of extreme risk, isn't it? Just thinking about this scenario would make you scared to pee, but for Alex, this is a low risk, merely scary looking endeavor. This point, to be frank, is utterly at odds with my own life choices. Because my rule is that I won't do things with low risk but grave consequences, like hand climbing photos, which I would never attempt. If I make a single mistake during the process, I'll fall from dozens or hundreds of meters up and I will surely die. I could not bear that outcome, so I would never do such a thing. But to Alex, this rock climbing, hand over hand, has minimal risk. Why is the risk so small? Due to the years, decades even, of effort he put into training for this, maintaining his physique, and building up his knowledge and experience in rock climbing. He himself believes this is a low-risk endeavor, and he's willing to make this choice just to enjoy the thrill of climbing. I hold this outcome in high regard. It may well be that, for folks like us, everyday people, things with minimal risk but dire consequences should never be attempted. Things like recklessness or those sort of whatever sorts of things, right? We should just stay far away from them. Though the risk may be quite small, still you shouldn't do it, nor rely on any sliver of luck. But Alex is extremely smart, definitely, not a reckless person. Just look, he's still alive doing free solo, and he's in his 40s now. And so many extreme sports enthusiasts have met with failure. It wasn't that all their failures stemmed solely from bad luck or any particular set of circumstances. many folks are numb. They tend to be quite reckless folks. Last time I saw a free solo climber who was quite young, probably just in his early 20s. And he showed immense passion and great talent in rock climbing. He became, I think, the youngest ever free solo climber to conquer a certain famous spot or location. He had one climb, perhaps his very last one, that ended in the final stretch. He reached the top of the rock climbing route quite swiftly, but he forgot, while exiting, about a very crucial spot or step along the way. He likely failed to tie the knot properly, which led to him falling, and thus ending a future that had once shown great promise and potential. This, in my view, was an extremely reckless and foolish act. And there are many. When I watch that Secret Garden video, I see so many folks who are way too bold and reckless. Perfect, based on one shot. Maybe he just got carried away with his post-climb soaring and didn't think much about this, the risks and consequences involved. You often see folks like so and so, then, oh, crossing this desert land, cross the redemption line, then head off to some place to explore. Then what happened next? Go ice climbing, do all sorts of things. Very reckless. But why is Alex still doing fine up until this day? And I think that rock climbing in this case is a very low risk endeavor, perhaps even safer than him. Just stepping out the door, the risk of getting into a car crash is far lower still. Why then? Because whenever he does anything, he never acts recklessly, but always does so rationally. You see, when he FRE-SOLO'd that 500-meter cliff face at court, did he just jump in and assume right away that he was great? Or did he take each rope climbing session with utmost care and precision? Note each route precisely. There is no room for wishful thinking. I forgot if he said that, but he did. There was someone who was quite sharp like that. With rock climbing, you must remember each foothold's position, the stance you take, must be spot on, no room for error at all. But for instance, in me, someone like me, I would think something like, I sort of know a direction, a route to take. There's a foothold here I can grip. Is that good enough? Do you think? But Alex's response, or rather, his actions, were simply affirm. No. Before he free climbed El Capitan, he had gone through dozens of training sessions, and he knew precisely which route to take and exactly how to proceed. Each footstep and stride he had etched deeply into his mind already. There simply would not be a case where I might not recall clearly or wonder if this way would work or not. This is his secret weapon against risk, because he is cautious, meticulous, and just very thorough. Indeed, he had every foothold and each move down pat, with no room for luck or careless chances. For instance, folks like us might think, you see, maybe you missed a few steps along the whole route. Missed one or two footholds, or just couldn't recall this route at all. That sounds quite plausible to most of us, I suppose. But this is where the risk lies. So why does Alex think that free solo climbing poses almost no risk at all? Nearly zero risk in his eyes when it comes to this endeavor. But to us, this is beyond discussion. So whether a task truly carries risk depends on the actions you take and the judgments you make. If you prepare in a reckless way or treat the matter with casual disregard, you might think you can improvise and adapt as things unfold. So sorry, but the risk at this point becomes hundreds, even thousands of times greater. Then chances are that, even if not this time, you might still fail in some future attempt. But with someone like Alex, who is always so careful, there is no problem. Look at how he climbed this TYP E101 during this attempt. He had done rock climbing with ropes beforehand. He knew exactly what to do with this step and had a clear plan in mind, rather than just jumping in blindly. I've watched quite a few of those extreme challenge streamers out there. I see what you'll notice is that they will tend to be quite reckless. You will notice that some of them have no safety measures at all, nor are they fully versed in this kind of thing. You see, this person seems quite hasty, yet dares to climb and scale and stand atop the world, doing all sorts of daring feats. Sorry, but death creeps ever closer to you in this process. So you can see Alex, he's quite a man. I think he's a truly charming man. he remains calm and steady when doing certain things. He is very steady, very. I mean, for instance, when you hear him speak, you just think, oh, almost no fluff at all, yet it's clear and direct with very little emotional ups and downs. Just minutes before I recorded this podcast episode, I watched one where he was in. Just like it happened just 2 days ago, when he did an interview on some US talk show. Then the host asked him, I heard, or so the rumors go, that your brain is scared of things, not by the script or whatever. Then he just gave a little chuckle. The point is, it's not that I am not afraid now. It does not mean that my brain is in any way different from others. But when I rely on the skills I've honed over decades through countless repetitions and diligent practice, I no longer feel fear about this matter at all. But I might still feel scared about certain things, like when I'm in a crowd of people. But when it comes to rock climbing, I feel so confident and fully prepared. It no longer feels scary to me. Just look at us. We hadn't done any training or preparation, so it was bound to feel scary. Look at him. He's had decades of training and is now quite adept at this. So it's not that his mind is any different from others. It's that through years of build-up and training, he's become desensitized to such risks. So this experience taught me, or served as a reminder, when facing risks, we must never entertain thoughts of luck or 侥幸. Even if it's a high risk or low risk sort of thing, even if a task is high risk, if you can break it down and work on it step by step, settle and do drills, it can gradually become a very low risk endeavor, for instance. Many high risk ventures we undertake, like starting a business, it is indeed a venture with high risk. I don't believe I possess such high risk resilience yet, because I feel there are still many things. There are many business things I don't quite grasp or understand. But perhaps in a few years, I'll see starting a business as less risky indeed. You see, nowadays, if someone says start a business, they'll say narrow escape. It's very risky. But for folks like them who don't understand, the risks truly are quite substantial. And even for myself, as I am now, I still lack the means to face these risks head on. But once we've built up enough experience in this area, perhaps in a few years, I would see starting a business as a low risk endeavor, so I should pursue it more. Take, for instance, drunk driving or other high risk acts, where no amount of training or preparation can fully prevent them. Then from the very start, try to stay far away from it. Do not entertain any sense of luck, nor act recklessly. Don't think, for instance, that drunk driving is no big deal, just a little, and I'm not even drunk. But at that moment, you are taking a massive risk and making a reckless decision. This is strictly not permitted at all, or rather, a totally unwise act. Those 4 points, they are the 4 key lessons I've learned recently, so I'd like to share them with you. I hope this brings you some insight and assistance. See you next time then. Goodbye.